But as we move back into the building, I think we face one of the most critical moments in the modern church. And that is that we've been talking to the camera for 9 months. And so as people come back into the building, if we're not careful, we will turn the online audience that's been watching our worship into observers of the experience that's actually happening in the room, and we won't be talking to them anymore.
Hello again, everyone, and welcome to the Louisiana NOW podcast. That voice you heard off the top of this episode is Jason Moore. Jason is the author of 10 books and known for his pioneering work in collaborative worship design and guest readiness, and has devoted the last couple of decades to resourcing, development, training, and coaching and consulting. And he will be the host for a very fun and informative, and I might also add, important webinar exclusively for the Louisiana Conference called Both and it's the focus of today's episode of Louisiana Now. Welcome in, everyone. I'm your host, Todd Rossnagel. My interview with Jason will be coming up, and I'll also be joined by Serena Eckert, Program Coordinator for the Office of Congregational Development and Transformation inside the Louisiana Conference. The Office of Congregational Development and Transformation have been hard at work, as all of us have been, most especially hard at work since the pandemic, continuing to find ways to help the churches and congregations in Louisiana. Before we get to the interviews, though, a bit more about the webinar. It will be Thursday, January 21st from 2 to 4 o'clock in the afternoon on Zoom. It's a webinar. You can register for the event on our website, la-umc.org/bothand. The focus: how do we worship in today's complex environment of having both an online audience and an in-person audience? Before the pandemic, the majority of congregations who, if they were lucky to even offer an online presence, were creating an experience for the people gathered in person in their buildings. And every now and again, the leader may glance over to the webcam and say, "And if you're worshiping with us online, we're glad you've joined us." And that was about it. Today, both the online audience and the in-person audience have become vitally important. And the question becomes, how can church leaders create a space where neither audience feels secondary and both feel included? How can we create those interactive experiences in real time? And how do you repurpose in-person worship for an online audience? These are exactly the types of questions that we will explore in the webinar. And a special note, this webinar will feature a very important follow-up for the first 100 participants. So often you've attended a webinar and you have questions, and suddenly questions about how to implement the changes and what the next steps are. Well, on February 25th, Jason will join us again for that all-important follow-up. Again, that's for the first 100 participants, so register today. For Serena Eckert, this webinar will help so many pastors and church leaders who have been doing such incredible work over the past 10 months.
Oh, I have to tell you, Todd, well, and for those listening, for the clergy folks out there, especially, and their lay leaders as well, but especially for our clergy, what an incredible roller coaster ride this has been over the last 10, 11 months, years. I don't know. It seems like forever ago, March of 2020, doesn't it? But for so many of our churches, not only did they have to really overnight figure out how to get online for worship, many of them for the first time ever. And I just applaud them all for the amazing effort put forth to make all of that happen. But now you're right. It's not just one or the other. It truly is both and. And how do you do that well and try to meet the expectations of congregation members who are equally overwhelmed and frustrated and often, let's face it, uncooperative, or at least not willing to perhaps do things in new ways. So the incredible ways that our clergy have had to overcome and continue to have to overcome this enormity of this change and this challenge that continues to present itself to us. And yes, it is a both and. So now it's almost harder than ever. It's one thing if you're all digital, and for a while we had to do that, and churches were doing the very best they could. And then it was back in person, but to do both and to do that faithfully and effectively while also trying to live out our mission of making new disciples, right? And trying to keep congregations content and engaged. It really is an overwhelming place that our clergy find themselves in. So it is our hope, our office strives to offer support and resources that are both timely and needed. So what we have been hearing back from our clergy is this is the kind of thing that would be really helpful right now. And that was why we are just so excited that we were able to kind of secure Jason Moore to do this for us. And it is our hope that it is truly of benefit to all of our clergy.
And the cost is free. So there's that's always a
Yes,
a good thing.
absolutely. We specifically wanted to cover the cost of this so that we could, our Office of Congregational Development and Transformation, so that we could offer it to all the churches within our Louisiana conference without charge to them.
Serena, as we mentioned before, you are in the Office of Congregational Development and Transformation, serving as the program coordinator and one of many working hard inside that department, led by Reverend Gloria Fowler. I know that you and the entire department, y'all are even thinking about how can we help churches in the midst of everything that is on their plate. You're even having to kind of, in some sense, reinvent your department.
Oh, absolutely. And I think that's why in many ways that we certainly feel the pain of what our local churches are going through. We have been and are continuing to live into this new hybrid reality as well. So 2020 has did give us an opportunity to reflect and discern what truly was essential about the work that we do, in the same way that local churches have had to discern what is essential about their worship and their ministry. And then we've had to find new and creative and innovative ways to offer the resources that we strive to offer in new and exciting, hopefully, and digital ways that we've never done before. So much of our work, like the work of the local church, is done best in person. But we have had to find ways to do this online as well. And we certainly feel that pain that is felt on the local church level in profound ways as well. But we're just here and excited to be able to continue to offer that support and guidance and resources for all of our churches, as they in turn then provide faithful and fruitful ministries for their congregations and their communities, even now, and certainly in ways that are more needed now than perhaps ever before.
Serena Eckert from the Office of Congregational Development and Transformation, discussing both and maximizing hybrid worship experiences for online and in-person audiences. Mark your calendars. It'll be Thursday, January 21st on Zoom from 2 until 4 o'clock in the afternoon. You can register on our website at la-umc.org/both and. Serena, thanks so much for joining us. We really appreciate it. And I heard something as we segued into a new year. There was a reflection that I read about how 2020 was the the new normal that landed in our laps, and that perhaps 2021 will be a year where we learn how to deal with the new normal. And this is certainly one way for all of us to try and adjust to what is now a new reality.
Absolutely. Yes. And may it be so, right? Because with great adversity also comes great opportunities. And may we all maximize those opportunities before us to further our mission to make disciples of Jesus Christ for the transformation of the world.
We're going to take a break. When we come back, Jason Moore will join us. But first, a word from our sponsor, the United Methodist Foundation of Louisiana. The mission of the United Methodist Foundation of Louisiana is to be a catalyst that strengthens and preserves the current ministries of the conference while meeting the needs of a diverse and rapidly changing society. What does that mean for you and me? Well, within the last decade, the foundation loaned over $23 million to more than 100 United Methodist churches. These loans address the needs for expansion, renovation, or unexpected repairs, primarily so churches can be in a better position to meet the needs of the communities they serve. They've been awarding grants for a quarter of a century now, totaling over $5 million. And to think it all started with a $5,000 check back in 1975 at the first meeting. That check, referenced by the foundation as a mustard seed, took root and has now grown to over $170 million in managed assets, the fourth largest of all United Methodist foundations. And it has helped distribute hundreds of thousands of dollars each year to Christian ministries in Louisiana and throughout the world. Back now to the show, the Both And webinar, which will be held January 21st and hosted by Jason Moore. I had a chance to visit with Jason and get his thoughts on the new dynamic of preaching and leading in the Both And world. And to start our conversation, we went back in time to when this new world began, March of 2020, and the sudden shift that propelled us all to our new current environments.
First of all, I just have to say kudos to the church for being so malleable and moving so quickly. I've been saying that what we experienced last March was sort of the modern day equivalent of watching Gutenberg fire up the press for the first time. You know, it's this dramatic shift that has occurred in the church, and it's been so fun to watch. And churches experimented and tried new things, and wow, it's just been incredible to watch. You know, I think part of what we're going to talk about in this training is that early on we had the spirit of sort of innovation, and we were iterating and trying all kinds of new things. But I think that part of what has happened is that we've gone from finding a new groove to potentially being in a rut where we're doing kind of the same things over and over. We found a few tricks that worked, and so we built a new template. And so I'm encouraging churches to continue to iterate and innovate and try new things. But as we move back into the building, I think we face one of the most critical moments in the modern church. And that is that we've been talking to the camera for 9 months. And so as people come back into the building, if we're not careful, we will turn the online audience that's been watching our worship into observers of the experience that's actually happening in the room, and we won't be talking to them anymore. Or we could potentially turn the room into like Saturday Night Live, the studio audience, as we talk to the camera. And I really believe that neither audience wants to be an afterthought. So that's why Both And is so important. How do we address both audiences in a way that really caters to both the in-person experience and the online experience? And we'll talk about a lot of strategies for how to do that.
So, Jason, you really do believe that this is the future of worship. There is no going back. This is how we're going to be doing worship.
I really do believe that this is the future. I've heard a lot of people say we just got to get through this so we can go back. And what I want to remind us of is that, God is always moving, and God is moving in new ways. And so we need to move forward, not backward. One little analogy I used on social media a few days ago that seems to resonate with folks, as I was talking about the idea of just an imagined scenario. Imagine you're a guitar player, and you're a great guitar player, and one day you break your strings. And you go to order new strings, and you find out that there's a 9-month back order on those strings. And so you're not going to be able to play your guitar for 9 months, but you're a musician. You have to make music. So you sit down at the piano, you start to noodle around, and, in that 9 months, you actually learn how to play piano pretty well. It sure would be a shame if in 9 months, when your guitar strings come in, you don't ever sit down at the piano again. There are people that like piano music better than guitar music. And there are people who will engage with us online in ways or that are part of that sort of an experience that will never walk through our doors. So I really do believe there's a both and that will be a part of our ministry moving forward.
Jason, change is hard. Change is hard for all of us. It's hard for the church. It's hard to kind of wrap your arms around doing something new when the thing you've been doing for so long has, in some cases it's worked, in some cases it hasn't worked. Change is just so hard. How do you help people, specifically pastors and churches, push past that moment of pain when it comes to change?
That is a question that I think churches have been asking for a very, very long time. Right. I think that part of what's really challenging about change is that you're always comparing the new thing to the established thing that you've worked all the kinks out of. And, the thing we've been doing for a long time, we know very well. And the thing that we haven't done so much, it really brings about, a little bit of fear and so on. One of the things that I have really encouraged churches to think about is to not completely overhaul everything so that nothing feels familiar. We don't have to completely break the mold. There are things that we do that can be adapted. One of the things I talk about in the webinar is the way that books become films. And the way that a book becomes a film is that you have to do a lot of consolidating. You have to do a lot of adapting. You have to reimagine. You have to embrace the limits of the new medium that you're telling the story. And I think some of us, we are going about worship as we always have with the camera in the back of the room, and that doesn't quite work. But we also don't have to completely change everything about what we've known of worship. I also think that small successes build confidence. So you try that one thing and it works, and that makes you feel better, and so on. So I would say don't take leaps that are so enormous that you completely feel out of the water that you're familiar with.
Jason, we are looking forward to our time with you. I know that the audience will benefit from it. And again, for the audience at home, Thursday, January 21st, Both And webinar. You can find all the details on our website, www.la-umc.org/ wait for it, Both And. You can find it on our website. Jason, thanks again for your willingness to help the pastors and the churches here in the Louisiana Conference, and thanks so much for taking time out of your busy schedule to talk to us.
Thank you, Todd. I am so looking forward to our time together and for the privilege to share this material with your conference.
Once again, the details of the Both And webinar can be found on our website, la-umc.org/bothand. We've included a link in the show notes of this episode. If you have any questions, feel free to drop us an email, and someone from the Office of Congregational Development and Transformation will respond. Thank you so much for joining us, and thanks for all that all of you are doing in the midst of this pandemic to continually bring the gospel to a hurting world. The message of love, peace, and forgiveness, it is a message so many need to continue to hear day after day.